Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the life of a fascinating figure today, Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, one of the very first to follow the Prophet Muhammad. What makes his story so interesting is that he wasn't your typical early Muslim. It really shows that there wasn't just one kind of person drawn to Islam back then.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at where he came from, the Ghifar tribe. These guys were known for highway robbery, but Abu Dar, he actually rejected all that. Even as a young man, people said he was serious, thoughtful, more of a loner, not exactly following in the family business, you could say.
So he was already kind of an outsider even before Islam. It sounds like he was searching for something deeper.
Exactly. He was already leaning towards believing in one God, even before he heard the prophet's message. So when word finally reached him out in the desert, you can imagine how powerful that must have been.
I can only imagine. So what did he do when he heard about this new prophet? Did he just pack up and go?
Well, not quite. He was careful, wanted to make sure this was the real deal. So first, he sends his brother to Mecca, to scope things out.
Smart move. So he wasn't just blindly following. He needed proof.
Right. But even after his brother comes back and tells him what he's seen, Abu Dar still felt this pull, like he had to experience it for himself. So he sets out for Mecca, all alone, not even knowing what the prophet looked like, just pure faith and gut feeling.
Wow, that's some serious commitment. Just up and leaving everything behind based on a feeling. Makes you wonder if there wasn't some kind of destiny at play.
So what happened when he gets to Mecca? How does he even find the prophet?
Okay, so this part is pretty amazing. Picture Abu Dar, a complete stranger in a new city. Somehow, he ends up meeting Ali, the prophet's cousin. Now, at the time, Abu Dar had no idea who Ali was, but something drew him to this guy.
What a coincidence. It's like he was guided there. Fate, maybe?
You could say that. And this chance meeting turns out to be huge because Ali ends up leading Abu Dar straight to the prophet. And get this, Abu Dar is believed to be the very first person to greet the prophet with Assalamu alaikum, the traditional Islamic greeting. For anyone listening who's Muslim, that's got to give you chills. It's like witnessing the birth of a tradition that's still alive today. Must have been an incredible moment.
It really was a small detail, but it shows you how special Abu Dar's place is in early Islam. But this guy, true to form, he didn't stop there. Abu Dar was all about action, about living what you believe. So unlike some early converts who kept their faith quiet, Abu Dar, he goes public, announces his conversion right away.
Openly. Wow, that must have taken some serious guts, especially back then.
It did. He actually got beaten up for it. But you know what ended up protecting him? The reputation of his own tribe, the Ghifar. They were known for being fierce, protective. So even though Abu Dar had rejected their way of life, their name still shielded him from the worst of it.
That's pretty ironic, huh? The very thing he turned away from ends up saving him. But it shows you how strongly he believed. He was ready to face anything for this new faith.
Exactly. This fearlessness, this commitment to what he believed in, it becomes like a defining characteristic for Abu Dar. Now, after the Muslims migrate to Medina, things get even more interesting. His influence explodes. He starts bringing whole tribes into Islam. People just connected with his sincerity, with the clarity of his message.
That's amazing how one person's belief can ripple outwards like that, impact entire communities. And, it's a good reminder that anyone can find Islam no matter their background. Like the lecture even mentions an imam who converted a whole gang. You just never know where faith will take root.
Right, and Abu Dar wasn't just content with the basics, he was always seeking deeper understanding, constantly asking the prophet questions, wanting to know how to live out his faith in every detail.
What were some of the things he was most interested in? What kind of guidance did he seek out?
Well, he was really drawn to the idea of good character, like the value of silence, contemplation, the spiritual connection we keep with loved ones even after death, and even simple acts of remembrance as a form of charity, especially for those who can't give a lot materially. You can see in his questions this desire to really embody his beliefs.
So it wasn't just about knowledge for him, it was about living it out every day. Now this brings us to a pretty dramatic part of Abu Dar's life, the expedition to Tabuk.
Ah, yes, the expedition to Tabuk, that's where things really get intense.
So this expedition to Tabuk, it sounds pretty rough. What happens to Abu Dar during this journey?
Well, it was tough on everyone. Desert heat, scarce supplies. And at some point, Abu Dar actually falls behind the group.
Oh, man. You start to think, was he getting weak? Losing his faith?
Nope, not at all. Turns out his camel just gave out. But get this. Instead of giving up, Abu Dar starts running to catch up. like on foot through the desert just to keep pace with everyone else.
He was running. That's intense. Shows you his dedication.
It really does. And when the prophet sees him, he says something pretty powerful. He says, "May Allah have mercy on Abu Dhar. He walks alone, he dies alone, and he will be resurrected alone."
Hmm. That's a bit cryptic, right? Sounds almost like a prophecy. What did he mean by that? It's a little ominous on the surface.
Yeah, it's a statement that's had scholars debating for centuries. But it wasn't meant as a bad thing, a curse or anything. The prophet was actually recognizing something really profound about Abu Dhar.
So what was it about?
He was acknowledging Abu Dhar's independent spirit, his total commitment to seeking truth. Like, this guy walked his own path, even if it meant standing apart.
Hmm.
And as we'll see, this prophecy really foreshadows how Abu Dhar's life unfolds.
You mentioned this prophecy plays out later on, so what happens after Tabuk? Where does Abu Dhar's story go from here?
Okay, so years pass. The Prophet Muhammad dies. The Muslim community is growing, expanding, lots of changes, political, social, everything. And for Abu Dhar, this is where things get tough.
They're kind of tough.
Remember how we talked about Abu Dhar rejecting his tribe's whole materialistic lifestyle? Well, as the Muslim community gets bigger, he sees more and more wealth, possessions, all that stuff, and it really bothers him.
I can see that. Early Islam was all about simplicity, charity. That's been hard to see that shift.
Exactly. Abu Dhar just couldn't reconcile it,
Yeah.
This focus on wealth versus the sacrifice and simplicity he believed in. It created this inner conflict for him. And remember, this is Abu Dhar. When he feels strongly about something, he speaks up.
So he challenged it openly.
Oh, yeah. He voices his concerns, reminds everyone about spiritual values over material things. And this was a big deal back then because early Islam really stressed unity, consensus. So when even someone respected like Abu Dhar, criticizes how things are going, it creates friction.
So his principles, while admirable, end up causing some problems.
Right, and it leads to Abu Dhar feeling more and more isolated. It's like that prophecy from the prophet is starting to come true. He's finding himself alone in his convictions.
So what does he do? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy to back down.
He wasn't. He was all about his convictions. So he makes a really difficult choice. He decides to withdraw from society completely, like asks the caliph at the time, Uthman, for permission to live in isolation.
Wow, he just walks away from it all. That's a huge step.
It was. But for him, it was the only way to stay true to what he believed, to find peace. It wasn't about judging others or causing division. He just couldn't reconcile his understanding of Islam with where the community was headed.
Must have been a tough spot to be in. So where does he go? How does he actually live out the rest of his life?
He goes to this place called Al-Rabatha, really remote settlement, edge of the desert, far from everything. Was a very simple life there, contemplation, quiet. His wife and young son go with him.
It's striking, someone so central to early Islam, so close to the Prophet, ends up choosing this solitary path. Makes you think about how different people find their own truth, how they live out their faith.
It does. And it's important to remember, even though he chose isolation, Abu Dhar never lost his faith, never abandoned the core of Islam. He just found his own way to live it out authentically.
This is where the story takes a turn, though. A poignant one, and full of meaning. As Abu Dhar's getting older, nearing the end, his wife starts to worry. They're so isolated. What'll happen when he's gone?
Right. She tells him, "You're going to die out here in this wilderness. There'll be no one to wash you, bury you." It's a natural fear, especially in that situation.
Absolutely. Death is hard enough even when you're surrounded by people. But out there, alone, terrifying.
It was. But Abu Dhar, with that strong faith of his, he comforts her. He says, "Don't grieve. A group of believers will come to me. They'll pray over me." Like, even in that isolation, he was sure they wouldn't be abandoned.
Wow. He had that much faith, even facing death. Pretty powerful for him. But was he right? Did things actually happen, like he said?
This is where it gets really interesting. A while after Abu Dhar passes away, a group of travelers comes across his little dwelling. A caravan heading from Medina to Iraq, led by none other than Abdullah ibn Masud.
Wait, Ibn Masud, he was like one of the first converts too, right? Didn't he become a big scholar, a teacher?
The very same. What are the odds he'd be the one to find Abu Dhar way out there? It really does feel like destiny,
Almost too perfect. Two guys who started their journeys into Islam together, reunited at the end of one's life. Beautiful in a way.
It is. And when Ibn Masud sees his old friend laid out, ready for burial, he's overcome, weeps, and then it's like he's driving home the point of it all. He repeats the prophet's prophecy. May Allah have mercy on you, Abu Dhar. You lived alone, you died alone, and you will be raised alone.
Man, that's heavy. But it's like these two guys represent different sides of early Islam, Ibn Masud, the scholar, the teacher, and Abu Dhar, the seeker, out there in solitude. And they meet again like this.
Right. It shows you how diverse that early community was. Different personalities, different approaches, but united by that same faith. There wasn't just one way to be a Muslim.
Like a reminder that there's no one right way to practice. Everyone's journey is their own. What matters is how sincerely you believe, and you try to live a meaningful life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And Abu Dar's story, even with that unconventional ending, really proves that point. Here's a guy who challenged everything, went against the grain, and ultimately chose a path less traveled to stay true to himself.
Full of twists and turns, but that commitment to truth, it never wavered. Always questioning, striving to understand his faith more deeply. Even when he was standing alone, he stuck to his principles.
And that's the biggest lesson we can take away from Abu Dar, I think. It's a call to be authentic, to live a life that matches your deepest values, even if it means doing things differently.
And it reminds us that seeking truth, it's a journey, not a destination. It's not about having all the answers. It's about always reflecting, asking those tough questions, being open to new ideas.
Exactly. Abu Dar shows us that. He encourages us to be ourselves, to stand up for what we believe in, and to keep searching for truth, even if it means going it alone.
Well, that was an amazing deep dive. Abu Dar's story really gives us a lot to think about. Faith, conviction, the courage to be true to yourself.
A story that still speaks to us, even after all these centuries, reminds us that finding meaning, finding fulfillment, it often comes from embracing our own unique path, just like Abu Dar did.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration of Abu Dhar al-Ghifari's life. We hope you'll keep diving deep, keep searching out those stories that challenge us, inspire us, and help us understand ourselves and the world just a little bit better.